was very good. Okay, and now we're going to have our last presentation of this particular session. And we're going to invite Michael Koslowski, who is also part of the Searle team, and Rebecca Schmor, to come and talk about language integration through ePortfolio Lite, a plurilingual, action-oriented, and pedagogically innovative online tool for language learning and reflection. And I'm just going to mute all now, and everyone remember to, if for some reason this doesn't work, it should work to keep your mics muted. And the two presenters right now, Michael and Rebecca, should be able to unmute, and we see your presentation on the screen ready to go. And I'll give you 5 minutes in the chat and with my hand, and 1 minute when we're at the end. Go ahead. Thank you.
All right, so you guys can hear me well. All right, today we'd like to introduce you to an online tool called Lite, which means or stands for Language Integration through ePortfolio. And this is part of the LinkDIRE project, which stands for Linguistic and Cultural Diversity Reinvented. So my name is Michael Koslowski. I'm a 4th year PhD student at OISE. I'm an English instructor. I've been on the LinkDIRE project since 2017. I'm also a learner of French and Japanese.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. So I'm an incoming student, a PhD student at OISE, and I'm also a research assistant in the LinkDIRE project. So a bit about my background. I've had the pleasure of teaching English and Spanish and German at different institutions in the private language and higher education sectors.
And you can see this slide. This is an example of the profile page on our Lite tool, which we'll show you momentarily. So a little bit of background about the project. LinkDIRE started as a SSHRC-funded partnership between lead researchers at the U of T, including our own Enrica Picardo, also York University and the University of Ottawa. And since then, the project has included researchers, grad students, and teachers from several institutions across North America and Europe, and also different language learning contexts, including ESL, FSL, Indigenous language revitalization, and heritage language programs. And the LinkDIRE project is kind of organized around 4 kind of key pillars, kind of theoretical or pedagogical pillars. The first that we want to talk about is the action-oriented approach. And this focuses on what learners are doing and emphasizes the use of meaningful real-life tasks to achieve situation-specific goals. So in a learning task, for example, you'd plan a trip with friends and use all your linguistic resources for that real world goal, as opposed to a kind of grammar is king model of kind of traditional language teaching and learning. Second is holistic reflections, and this was introduced, the kind of concept, by Dr. Alan Corbier of Mchiging First Nation on Manitoulin Island. And this draws on the 4 quadrants of the medicine wheel to guide reflections on language learning in a holistic way. So where, again, traditional teaching and learning kind of focuses only on the mental aspects of learning. In the holistic aspects, we're looking at spiritual, emotional, and physical. And we'll see that a little bit more when I show you guys the online tool. Third is plurilingualism. As many of you know, an approach to language education that views learners and languages as dynamic and interconnected, as opposed to separate and in competition, right? So we can use our whole repertoires in language learning beyond just the target language. And then finally, the technology aspect, which is obviously a vital tool to support language learning, and especially has been even more so in the context of the pandemic, and then obviously going forward as well. So I'm now going to show you the key features of our online tool. So let me just change my, okay. Can you guys see the new screen here?
Yep.
Okay. So starting with a plurilingual journey, this is similar to a social media profile page. So I can post pictures And really what I'm doing here is expressing kind of my own linguistic and cultural identities and also my experiences, right? So we have spaces for stories and pictures, my languages, favorite words, linguistic encounters, cultural encounters. So it's kind of a linguistic autobiography. And then I can, in the community tab here, organize the classes in their own groups, and I can interact with other members of my community, friend them, message them, view their profiles, comment, and those kinds of things, right? So that's the kind of social aspect of the site. We also have the level checks. So these are based on the CFR descriptors. The global level check is something that you would do when you first start with the tool. The global level check goes across these 7 proficiency dimensions, including pluricultural, plurilingual, and mediation, which are new additions to the CFR. And basically, I'll choose my language, my target language here, and then answer a series of can-do statements on my proficiencies and competencies in the language, which results in a global level check radar chart. And the cool thing here is that it superimposes different languages. So I can see kind of my plurilingual repertoire in a visual format. As you can see here, my Italian is impeccable. My English could use some work. And then we also have the level checks, which go into a more kind of zoomed in assessment of my proficiencies and competencies. So these are organized around each CFR level, right? So if I'm at pre-A1, for example, or A1 in specific languages, I can see a more specific kind of representation of the same kind of radar charts. And then talking about the action-oriented approach, so then I would look at the scenarios, action-oriented scenarios, and we have a task kind of catalog here of about 30 scenarios that have been developed by the research team, teachers as well. Again, organized around real life language use. So as I mentioned before, a weekend away, I'm going to plan a trip with friends, and I'm using all my linguistic resources in order to be able to do that. And you can see that the system then leads us through step by step through the process. And there's also a can-do quiz at the end, again with can-do statements based on the specific learning outcomes of this scenario. Throughout the scenario, I might then make posts. So it might ask me to write a blog post or make a video. And so we have a post form here to upload posts. And this is kind of the e-portfolio aspect. So then my posts are, and also my best work, so I can collect all the work that I'm most proud of and organize them in a kind of e-portfolio aspect here. And then I was mentioning before about the holistic reflections. So again, based on the medicine wheel. So again, we have the 4 quadrants of mind, body, heart, and spirit. So I click on a quadrant, and then there's an agreement scale here. So for example, I now have a deeper connection with others, the community, and the earth, again, based on my learning throughout the scenario. So I can set those agreement scales, and then also a space for open-ended reflection at the end. And then these are generated in my reflections, which come in the form of donut charts, and they're time stamped, so I can see throughout my learning journey the different reflections that I've done in the past. Those are the main features of the Light tool. We also have the interface in 5 different languages. So again, supporting Indigenous language revitalization, right? We have interface in Ojibwe, also heritage language support, for example, in Italian, French, and German. So again, that's a key feature. We've had piloting classes that have used these different languages, right? So that's it for me for looking at the tool. We will now go to my colleague Rebecca, who is going to talk about the research process and also some of the key findings from our project.
Great. So in the development of Light, We wanted to emphasize that the research process has really been an iterative process with many different components interacting with and informing each other. So as you see here in this image, the research process mainly consists of things like focus groups with students, interviews with teachers. We've done a few pre and post kind of intervention surveys and different kinds of classroom observations. So this kind of cyclical process really allows the research team to implement along the way different feedback from teachers and students. And then it allows us to make, and allows Michael as well to make different improvements, continual improvements to the light experience and the interface. It also allows us to then produce different kinds of training materials, for example, different resources for teachers. And on the website, there's also a little collection of a developing collection of case studies and then also examples of student work. And so the main findings that we wanted to share with you, a few findings that are going to be published in an upcoming book, which you see in the middle there, Activating Linguistic and Cultural Diversity in the Language Classroom. We share in this book, we share a lot of parts of the project in this book, but we share also some of the main findings around these three sort of categories that you see here. So the action-oriented tasks, plurilingual competence, and then the idea of blended learning, which happens through light. So findings have, of course, been positive, shown a lot of positive developments, and then also very useful, shown us different challenges, further challenges to overcome. So just briefly, you'll notice on the screen, there's a few opportunities we wanted to highlight. So we've received lots of feedback around just opportunities for learner agency and flexibility. This is flexibility of materials and tasks through the scenarios. Under the plurilingual competence, there's opportunities to use all or more linguistic resources in a classroom, and then to increase cultural awareness. Those were some of the main positive findings. And then going below here under blended learning, some positive opportunities were, as Michael was showing you, just these, some of the social learning that can happen in this sort of simulated social media environment. And then you were able to see also the portfolio. So there's been lots of positive feedback as well on opportunities for self-assessment. A few challenges, which under the different categories as well, we have things like teachers asking for more support, needing a bit of support in preparing materials, preparing these scenarios. So that's as well part of the research process and the cyclical development of the tool. In terms of language, there have been consistent comments and feedback around things like either confusion or hesitancy on the part of both teachers and learners, just in terms of the target language. So using languages other than the target language in their classes. And then of course with technology, as I'm sure we all know this year, there's always technical issues. So we've been able to create different resources, training resources for the site, and also deal with things like technical glitches in terms of registration, or just making the tool more accessible and easier to use. And then you see also time constraints. So we all, again, are very familiar with this, but teachers were not always able to make use of all the features due to either time or curricular constraints. All right, so as we near the end of our presentation, we wanted to share with you a couple next steps. So we're excited to be able to continue this project with so many different partners, some original, some new. So one of our new partners was made possible through a partnership engagement grant. And this is with the Ministry of Education in Italy. So I'm very lucky to be working on this project right now with our partners there. And so they're just finishing the implementation of scenarios, and we're looking forward to seeing how this will also give us new findings on how light was used, sometimes fully online or sometimes again in a blended format as the situation evolved and developed and changed in Italy, in person and online distance education throughout the pandemic. And then finally, we have also a new grant that's starting very soon, which is an insight grant around action-oriented language teaching. So this grant really comes from the iterative research process that we were showing, and specifically the feedback that we received for the need for more teacher education. So adopting a tool like this requires also sometimes, as we've seen, an adoption of the approach and some of the theory behind it. And so this grant really aims to support teachers in adopting not only the tool of light, for example, but also the approaches behind it. So thank you for being here right till the end of our conference and presentation. If you're interested in finding out some more, we can please take a minute to either scan one of the QR codes there or note down the information.